Hey fam, Wendy here, aka the Thrifty Sewist, back with another sewing tutorial. Feel like it's been a minute since I filmed one of these. Whether you're new here or if you're a returning subscriber, thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to make the Bali Top by Greenstyle, and I'm using this athletic knit from Blended Thread Fabrics. I believe it is called Charged Leopard, but I'm not positive on that. And it was a pre-order that I purchased at some point, so I don't know if you can get this currently, unfortunately. But I only have a half a yard, so I think that will be enough because I'm doing the cropped version. I hope it'll be enough, so we'll see. As always, I will have all of the chapters linked below in the description box. So if you want to skip around to any part of the tutorial, that will all be time-stamped for you. And if you want to see me sew it up, stick around. All right, here's our options for this pattern. We have a crop length or a top length. There's a higher V-neck or a lower V-neck option. The front can be ruched with elastic or a tie, and the tie can also go around the neck as well. You have a sleeveless version, or you can do short sleeves, 3/4 length sleeves, long sleeve, or a short tulip sleeve option. All right, let's get right into it. I'm going to show you the pieces. Now I am making the crop length, lower V-neck tank version. So here are my pieces. This is my back piece, and I am doing a size H, and I was just under an inch short with the length, which is fine. It'll just be a little bit shorter in the back. So just so you know, if you only have a half yard of fabric and you need size H or above, you're going to be short with the length on the back piece. The front, I just made it. So we have our two front pieces here. I have two arm bands for the tank version, and then my neckband. I didn't have enough to cut the neckband on the fold, so I cut out two pieces, added seam allowance, and then just sewed those together. And then I am not doing the tie version. I'm doing the ruched elastic version. So here's my elastic. It says to use a narrow elastic. It doesn't give you a measurement. So I would take that to mean 1/4 inch elastic, but I'm actually using 3/8 because I want like a little bit of a chunkier look with that ruching in front. And look at how short this is. It's 3 5/8 inches. Like, I don't know how I'm going to stretch that. Well, okay, maybe. We'll see how it goes. So anyway, there is a chart in the tutorial that tells you what length of elastic you need. All right, let's get going. Our seam allowance is 3/8 for this pattern. Now, step 1 is shoulder seams, and be careful because this can get a little bit tricky, figuring out which is the center front versus the side seam. This is how it looks. So these two curves should match. That's the arm side. This is our V-neck here, and this is our front, which is going to be ruched. So you're going to match these up at the shoulder, pin at your two shoulders, and sew that with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, once you have your shoulder seams sewn, the steps can be different depending on the version you're making. So for me, I am going to do my side seams next because I am making the tank version. So what you're going to do is pin both of your side seams, sew those up with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And after that is the armband. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew those together now. As you know, I typically like to press any bands in half to do a memory crease, But listen, you already know that there's so much stuff on my ironing board and I'm not about to clear it off. So I'm going to skip that. But you're going to take your armbands and right sides together. You're going to sew those as well with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to sew both of my side seams, both of the short ends of my armbands, and I'll be right back. All right, got 2 armbands sewn, have our side seams sewn. Believe it or not, this is a really quick and easy pattern. And I just love anything with ruching typically. I think it's so cute. And I'm making this for like a little workout top. So yeah, I think it's going to be super cute. Okay, so next step is to fold your armband in half. And you're going to pin and sew it to your arm side. I'm going to quarter it. I don't believe the tutorial says to quarter it, but it's just a little bit easier to get an even stretch when you quarter it, just to make sure that you're not overstretching any one part of it. So I'm also planning on doing a video for those of you that are extreme newbies to sewing on just specifically how to quarter and attach a neckband. An armband would be the same exact process, but basically you're just splitting it into 4 equal parts, once again, just so you don't overstretch any one part. It just helps you keep it a little bit more even when you're sewing it on. All right, so I have my armband pinned on. I'm going to sew that with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to pin the other one on and sew that as well. So I'll be right back. All right, we have our armband sewn on. And I'm feeling like I might come back and top stitch these with maybe like a hot pink or purple or something. But I'm not going to do that right now because that would mean I have to change my thread. Okay, next is our neckband. It says to take your neckband, fold it in half, wrong sides together, and press. I'm not pressing. And then what you're going to do is pin it along the neckline. Now the good news is V-necks are typically tricky, but this is a little bit of a different method for the V-neck because, you know, the front is 2 pieces instead of 1. So what you're going to do is you're going to just basically pin your neckband all along the neckline with, make sure all of your raw edges are matching up. And then you're just going to sew that on, and the tutorial says to stretch more. Wait, I forgot. Let me go check. Okay, it says to stretch it more along the back neckline curve than the front. So you're going to start at your front, just very gently stretching it, stretch it more along the back, and then once you get to, like, I'd say the shoulder seam, just gently stretch it again. You don't want to overstretch those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and get this pinned, and then I'll be right back to show you what it looks like all pinned on. All right, so I have this all pinned on, and the way that I pinned this was, as I was pinning, I gently stretched it, like almost not even stretched it, just barely, right here. And then once again, as I got to the shoulder seam, I didn't even pin it because, as you can probably tell, I'm going to have to stretch it quite a bit to be even with the shoulder seam, but that's okay. It's going to stretch. And I know that because I have it pinned on, and I can see that if I stretch it, I can get those even. So I'm going to do the majority of my stretching along this back neckline. And something else to note as well, when you're pinning this on, you have this angle here, which is going to match up to your front. That's going to be actually your center front. So that will match up as well. So now you're just going to go ahead and sew that on with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Again, not stretching the front part too much, stretching more throughout the back neckline. So be right back. All right, so our neckband is all sewn on. Is what it looks like. Yeah, I think I'm going to top stitch that. I'm going to top stitch the armbands, and the tutorial also says to neaten the center front, which is right here and right here, with a serger or a zigzag stitch. So I'm also going to go ahead and just run my serger just right down the center front, just to neaten both of these up. So I'm going to top stitch, I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, top stitching is done. I neatened up the front center fronts here with my serger. I went with pink for the top stitching for a nice pop of color. Looks beautiful. All right, next step is to hem, and you're going to be shocked because I actually am going to hem. Just because the back of this fabric is white, and you can kind of see, like, I don't know if it's going to pick it up on camera, but the edges, if it were to even curl a little bit, you can see some white. And B, just because, like, it's a super good quality fabric, and I don't know, I'm just going to hem. I know I don't need to rationalize it to you guys because hemming is the right thing to do. But anyway, I'm going to hem. So it calls for a 1-inch hem, but because I had to kind of shorten the back a little bit and I didn't have enough fabric, my length is already shorter in the back, so I think I'm just going to do about a 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and hem this with a 1/2 inch hem really quick, and I'll be right back. All right, hem is done, and all we have left to do is our center front. Okay, so what we're going to do is take this and put it right sides together. And I am going to snip off all my threads here just so that they're out of the way. And we're going to sew the center fronts together. Now, the seam allowance you use with this depends on whether you're doing the elastic version or the tie version for your ruching. So pay attention to that. I am doing, like I said, the elastic ruching. So the seam allowance that I'm going to use is 3/8. So what you're going to do is pin your center fronts together, right sides together, and you're going to sew that with the correct seam allowance, and you're going to use your sewing machine, not your serger, because what you're going to do is when you're sewing this, it's going to create the casing for, if you're using a tie, the casing, or for the elastic, it's just going to be sewn on. But just make sure you use your sewing machine and not your serger. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with the 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'll be right back. All right, last step here. So I stitched my center fronts together. If you're wondering what this is, I forgot to put my presser foot down. So that's what that is. I'm going to put a little bit of fray check on that just so it doesn't come unraveled. But you can see here my top stitching just almost matches up, which is good enough for me. And then on the bottom, it's pretty good too. Okay, so last step is to open up your seam allowance. So if you have a fabric that presses, I would definitely press this open. Mine actually is staying pretty well without the iron. And then you're going to sew your elastic on. Now it says to start 1 inch from the bottom, so that's about here, and sew it all the way up using a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch. And what you're going to do is, it says to stretch it less at the top and the bottom and more in the middle here. So this part can be kind of tricky even for me, like as you're sewing it on with the machine, trying to pull it through. and not stretching it enough. So I am actually going to go ahead and take you over to the machine and show you this part. All right, so we're over at the machine, and the first thing I'm going to do is pin my elastic on. So again, you want to have your seam allowance pressed open, and I am going to pin it right at the top here with an actual pin and not a clip, just so that it's really on there, because basically it's going to get a little bit tough to hold at both ends, especially when you're trying to stretch it. Okay, so I have it pinned there. All right, and actually I'm not going to start at the top. I'm going to start at the bottom, because you want to have it pinned at the end, okay, because you need it to go that long. I hope that makes sense. You're not going to pin it up here and then take your pin out when you start sewing. Okay, so it says to start about 1 inch up. So that's here, give or take. I didn't measure and it doesn't matter. I'm going to have to stretch this like a lot, like basically as much as it can stretch. And like I said, it's going to be tricky. So let's hope that I get this right. So I'm going to start by putting this under my machine and just kind of getting it in the right area. Again, I'm using a zigzag stitch. And I did make my zigzag stitch a little bit wider and a little bit longer, just so it covers more area of the elastic. So yeah, that's just personal preference. Okay, so I'm laying my elastic, again, 1 inch from the bottom. And before I do any stretching or anything, I'm just going to start by putting it under my presser foot and my needle. Put my needle down just so it's gripped on there, okay? Now, I'm going to start sewing, and I'm still not stretching anything yet. I just want to get this end tacked down a little bit. Okay, so I always like to pull my threads when I start sewing, no matter what stitch I'm using, no matter what I'm making, just to avoid any like bird's nesting or anything like that. So I'm going to just do a couple stitches, okay? And you could, I don't know if you saw that or not, but already my elastic kind of slid. Okay, so this is why it's tricky. So I have a couple stitches in there now. Let me do my back stitch to tack it down. And actually, I just realized I have a white bobbin in here, and I don't want white. So let me just change my bobbin really quickly. To a black one. And I'm just going to have to go and seam rip that really quick. Okay, take 2. All right, so now that I have the correct bobbin in there, I'm going to, once again, just get this situated under my needle with the elastic about 1 inch from the bottom. Put my needle down to hold it, my presser foot down, and just stitch a couple stitches to get this locked into place. Okay, back stitch to secure it. And I want to make sure too that my elastic is in the middle of this seam allowance that is pressed open. I don't want it like over to one side or the other too much, so I'm trying to keep it also in the middle. Okay, here's where it gets tricky. So you want to stretch this until, you know, it's until it's flat, basically. And as you start sewing, you're going to see that between the tension you're putting on this and the feed dogs trying to pull it through, it's tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my threads here in the back and pull them taut, and I'm going to go very slow and just try to pull a little bit in the back. You don't want to pull too hard. You don't want to mess anything up on your machine, but I'm just going to give it some tension just so that the tension I'm giving it in the front doesn't pull it back. So like it's two forces working against each other here. I hope that makes sense. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to stop, re-stretch this. And now that I have a little bit in the back here, I'm going to hold one finger in front, one finger kind of behind the foot to keep this flat and taut, and then finish it up. Stopping every once in a while just to make sure I'm still stretching this elastic at its full capacity. Okay, now I'm getting near the end, so I'm going to take out my pin, but make sure when you take out your pin you have a really good grip on this elastic, okay? And then back stitch to secure it. So let's take it out and see what it looks like. And I realized that I forgot how the tutorial had said to stretch it mostly in the middle and not so much at the ends. So we're going to just see how it turned out. Pretty good, I think. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. It's not so much ruched up here, but again, the tutorial, that's what it said. So, looks like we're done. I'm going to cut these extra threads out, and then I'm going to bring it back over to the cutting table and show you the finished product. All right, and we are all finished. Very quick and easy pattern, but what I like to call big payoff because I just think it's so cute. You're not really going to get the full effect until you see it on. Things right now, at least on mine, look a little bit wavy. If you have a fabric that presses well, you know, press your neckline, your arm size, all that with lots of steam. It'll get that little bit of waviness out. Mine's not too bad. Okay. But that is it. Love how it turned out. Very cute. All right, so that's all for this video. Thank you so much for sewing along with me, for joining me for the video. Please hit that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment below, and until next time, bye.